In 2008, Dr. Irving Kirsch, a psychologist at Harvard University, conducted a massive study on placebos, drugs that look just like real ones but have no actual therapeutic effect. The results of this study completely changed everyone's perspective on depression. There were two groups of depressed people. The first group got real medication and the second got placebos. The results showed that in cases of mild to moderate depression, the effect of placebos was almost equal to that of antidepressants, with an accuracy of about 82%. Patients who simply believed they were being treated showed signs of improvement, even though no real treatment was happening. This proves that when the brain can change its own system through suggestion, why should we jump straight to medication? After 2008, many doctors changed their views on medication and started recommending methods like psychotherapy, exercise, and lifestyle changes. But today isn't 2008. Our world is now full of meaningless comparisons. Unfortunately, depression in today's world is more dangerous than we think. Just as the brain can make us feel better with the placebo effect, it can also easily trap itself in a nasty cycle with negative suggestions. Dr. Jordan Peterson, an expert in this field, has some really helpful advice about depression, and today, with the help of this interview you're watching and his book 12 Rules for Life, we'll answer 3 important questions. I'm Cider, and welcome to a new video on the Power of Words channel. Now, you can easily find the symptoms of depression with a quick Google search, but the main issue for people dealing with this problem isn't just the symptoms. Unlike the simplistic way movies often portray depressed people, those who suffer from depression don't necessarily have a ruined life. They might not even be able to express their emotions or show their sadness, but their inner world is completely different. This is exactly the difference between sadness and depression. Dr. Peterson says we first need to understand this difference. A lot of times our lives are a mess and we feel terrible, but we mistake this for depression. A depressed person can be sad, but a sad person isn't necessarily depressed. Often, depression takes away our ability to even express how bad we feel, to the point where we don't even want anyone to help us. Scientists have found that the brain of a depressed person is different from that of a healthy person. Often, due to severe and prolonged stress, the connections between nerve cells decrease, and the communication between parts of the brain responsible for controlling emotions gets disrupted. That's why, in an article on Yale Medicine, it's mentioned that depressed people usually can't express their emotions properly. They might not even want to release their emotions through crying, whereas if you're just sad, you can express those feelings. Depression is usually a long-term disorder, and its treatment needs to be long-term as well. As we said at the beginning of the video, in cases of mild to moderate depression, medication isn't necessarily going to help much, but in severe cases, you definitely need to be under a doctor's care. Dr. Edward Wilson, a prominent American biologist, conducted a fascinating experiment. He randomly showed people images of different natural landscapes, and a very high percentage of people chose images of the African savanna. Aside from the evolutionary aspect, this shows that in the evolved human brain, certain things are interconnected and shared, one of them being our connection to nature. We, as civilized humans, might have been speaking for 5,000 years or living in settlements, but we evolved in forests and savannas over millions of years. Research shows that people with depression felt up to 5 times better after spending time in nature, which is why one of the main recommendations for people is that nature can be effective both in preventing and treating depression. These are some of the recommendations from the book Lost Connections by Johann Hari. Question number 2. One of the factors of depression in today's world is the feeling of not being enough. Whether it's because of the nature of these spaces or not, when you see a young person on Instagram giving motivational speeches with their dad's money, or when happiness and a good life are defined as constantly running to get ahead of others, it's clear that self-blame and the feeling of never being successful gradually erode our self-esteem. These feelings even extend to sexual characteristics, where adult films portray people as much more beautiful than they really are, making us feel inadequate. In this state, we might not become depressed, but if this continues for a long time, it can lead to individual and eventually social depression. The entire virtual world, and even the real world, is filled with the idea that you're not enough unless you buy our product, travel to certain places, own a certain car, or have a beautiful partner, as if having an attractive partner is some kind of major achievement. Add to this the complex economic situation, and it's clear that today's fast-paced world is leaving people behind, and when someone falls behind, they're quickly replaced. If we don't have a deep philosophical perspective in this cycle, we'll get stuck in the dopamine swamp that the system has created for us, and naturally, depression will show itself. Even after achieving great success, depression might still rear its head. It's hard to believe, but most research shows that children of wealthy individuals are more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues compared to the average population. This can be attributed to a few things. First, these individuals often have high expectations for their children and put them under immense pressure. Second, these kids usually don't define clear goals in life or understand what it means to feel need, because they've had every comfort and never had to work for anything. And third, their relationships are often superficial. They might not even have a proper connection with their parents, and when they make friends, they're unsure if the person is after their money or genuinely likes them. These three factors show that having unrealistic expectations, not finding meaning in life, and having shallow relationships can be major contributors to depression. Rule number 4 in Peterson's book says to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. This rule suggests that you should imagine yourself as someone you deeply care about. How you take care of them is how you should treat yourself. This means proper nutrition, exercise, setting healthy boundaries with others, and even sunlight. Yes, Dr. Andrew Huberman, a prominent neuroscientist, emphasizes that sunlight, due to its effect on brain chemistry, helps prevent depression. When we look at human evolution over millions of years, we can see how crucial sunlight is for us, but in modern urban life, we get much less of it. Dr. Peterson, in rule number 7, emphasizes that if you want to avoid depression, seek meaningful things, not just easy ones. We should avoid suffering, not pain. It's interesting to note that these two words are different in psychology. Pain is the bitter feeling we experience, but suffering is our interpretation of that pain. You might have experienced the pain of betrayal once, but the suffering from it could stay with you for years, and it's this interpretation that haunts us every day. When we can interpret our pain correctly, we stop suffering. That's why meaning is so important. Pain brings sadness, but suffering brings depression. Apart from the physiological aspects of depression, emotionally, depression can be seen as a continuous curve of unacknowledged and suppressed suffering that accumulates over time. Interestingly, research shows that genetics play a role in about 40% of depression cases. This doesn't mean that if your parents are depressed, you're doomed to be depressed too. But if you have such a history or feel something's off, it's not a bad idea to see a doctor. In short, we shouldn't label ourselves as depressed just because we're sad about our circumstances. But if you need help, please ask for it. Depression is too big a topic to cover in one video, and this video is just the start. We'll add more videos to this playlist. If you're interested, let us know if you'd like us to summarize the entire book Lost Connections by Johann Hari. This is the mind map and summary of this video.